I got a Band 9 in IELTS reading 3 times, and in this video you will learn a Band 9 reading strategy. We solve an IELTS reading practice test together step by step, and I show you how to find the correct answers quickly. If you're going to take your IELTS soon, check out my IELTS materials. There I teach you everything you need to score high. I show you step by step how to give high-scoring answers, and of course we do many practice tests together so you will feel confident for your test. You can find the link to the IELTS materials in the description box. And now let's get started. Here you can see the reading passage, and here are the questions. Let's have a look at the instructions. What do they say? You should spend about 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, which are based on reading passage 1 below. And then comes the passage, and here are the questions. So we start directly with questions 1 to 6. When you start your IELTS reading test, don't start by reading the passage first, because at that point you have absolutely no idea what the questions are about. And this means that you don't know what you need to look for in the passage. And so you waste valuable time if you read the whole passage in detail. That's why we now start with the first question. Let's have a look. What do the instructions say? Let's read them more closely. Do the following statements agree with the information in reading passage 1? In boxes 1 to 6 on your answer sheet, write true if the statement matches the information in the passage, false if the statement contradicts the information in the passage, and not given if there is no information on this. This is a true, false, not given question. I'm going to write this down here. And it's called like that because you have to find out whether the statement is true, false, or not given. Now, let's have a look at the first statement. The statement says, some of the artifacts at Pompeii have avoided environmental damage for almost 2,000 years. Guys, 2,000 years is an excellent keyword, because if the passage talks about that, it's quite likely that you find this number exactly like that in the passage, because numbers cannot be changed. And this helps us find the information really fast. What else are we looking for? We are looking for artifacts at Pompeii, and we have to figure out whether the passage says anything about that they have avoided environmental damage for almost 2,000 years. So at this point, we have absolutely no idea what the passage is talking about. Now, let's have a look at the passage and let's look for artifacts at Pompeii and 2,000 years and environmental damage. We start by scanning the passage from here. The city of Pompeii near Naples, Italy, was buried under volcanic ash after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. Then the passage continues saying that it has long been a source of fascination for archaeologists, but there is nothing about artifacts in this sentence. Let's scan the next sentences and see whether it says anything about artifacts. I can see the word artifacts here. So let's read this sentence more closely. What is remarkable is that approximately 1/3 of the city remains buried, and surprising artifacts and remains are still being uncovered today. And because they have been protected from air and water for nearly 2 millennia, they often emerge in near pristine condition. Guys, this is interesting because here it says that artifacts and remains are still being uncovered today, and they have been protected from air and water for nearly 2 millennia. What does our statement say? The statement says some of the artifacts at Pompeii have avoided environmental damage for almost 2,000 years. Here you can see that several words are paraphrased. First, actually 2,000 years is not stated as a number in the passage. This happens sometimes. Of course, numbers cannot be changed, and if the text states a number, you will find that number exactly like that in the passage. But sometimes the number is written out. or written in a different way. And this is what has happened here. That's why you need to be very careful. Here it says, for nearly 2 millennia. And this means for about 2,000 years. And the statement says, artifacts at Pompeii have avoided environmental damage. So they were not damaged by the environment. And the passage says that artifacts are still being uncovered today. They have been protected from air and water. This means that they haven't suffered damage by the environment because they have been protected from air and water. This is paraphrasing. The idea is just stated in a different way. So what can we say about this statement? This statement is true because the passage says that some of the artifacts at Pompeii have avoided environmental damage for almost 2,000 years. They have been protected from air and water for nearly 2 millennia, so for about 2,000 years, and they often emerge in near pristine condition. This means that they are in very good condition. So the statement is true, and that's why I'm going to write down true here. Let's continue with the next statement. The statement says, historians from Naples insist that their city is the birthplace of pizza. This is also an excellent keyword, pizza. We're looking for pizza and we want to know whether the passage says anything about this, whether it says that historians from Naples insist that their city is the birthplace of pizza. Let's have a look. Section 1 didn't talk about that. We had to look at this section. What about this second section? Let's have a look at this one. Can we find the word pizza somewhere here? I got it. It's here. Let's read this sentence here more closely. Nearby. What are they talking about? They say nearby was a fresco. So we want to know what nearby refers to. So let's read from here. One of the most exciting recent finds was an intact commercial oven capable of baking 100 loaves of bread per day. Nearby was a fresco, a painting made on wet plaster that showed a round flat bread on a tray, leading investigators to speculate that Pompeians had enjoyed an ancient kind of pizza. But research shows that neither tomatoes nor mozzarella cheese would have been available there in 79 CE, so Naples' claim to fame as the home of the pizza remains safe. What does the passage tell us? The passage tells us that investigators have speculated that Pompeians had enjoyed an ancient kind of pizza, but research shows that there were no tomatoes or mozzarella cheese during that time. And this means that Naples' claim to fame as the home of pizza remains safe. So Naples says it's the home of pizza, not Pompeii. What does our statement say? The statement says historians from Naples insist that their city is the birthplace of pizza. Is there anything about that in the passage? The passage says that Naples claims that it's the home of the pizza, but there is nothing about that historians from Naples insist that their city is the birthplace of pizza. This is not given in the passage. And what do you do when you can't find the information in the passage? It's not given. The correct answer is not given. So we are going to write down not given here. Let's have a look at the next statement, statement number 3. A thermopolia discovered in 2020 probably sold some vegetarian dishes, as well as meat-based ones. This is an excellent keyword. Here, thermopolia. This is a word that is likely not paraphrased in the passage, so we should find this pretty fast. So let's have a look at the passage. Does it talk about the thermopolia? Here. I can see it in this paragraph. Let's read from here. Pompeii was, however, famous for its snack bars, known as thermopolia. Thermo is the Latin word for hot, while polio means to sell. Since 2020, visitors have been able to see a complete Thermopolium, decorated with frescoes of gladiators and animals, including chickens and ducks. And then the paragraph continues saying, it is likely the stall sold meat-based fast food. This is interesting. It is likely that it sold meat-based fast food. As well as the images of birds, scientists found the bones of pigs and goats in earthenware pots at the site. And then the passage continues saying that they also found some crushed fava beans, which Pompeians were known to have used to improve the taste of wine. So, what does the passage say? It says that it's likely that the stall, so the Thermopolia here, sold meat-based fast food. And what does the statement say? It says a Thermopolia discovered in 2020 probably sold some vegetarian dishes as well as meat-based ones. Does the passage say anything about vegetarian dishes? I haven't seen anything here. The passage only says it is likely the stall sold meat-based fast food, but it doesn't say anything about vegetarian dishes here. So, what is the correct answer? We don't know whether the Thermopolia sold vegetarian dishes because there is nothing in the passage about that. So the correct answer is not given. I'm going to write down not given here. Here you need to pay a lot of attention. Many IELTS test takers think that because the information cannot be found in the passage, the answer is false, because they can't find the information. But if you can't find the information, the correct answer is not given, because there is simply not enough information in the passage to say whether the statement is true or false. So whether the stall did sell vegetarian dishes or whether it did not sell vegetarian dishes, we don't know. That's why the correct answer is not given. Now, let's continue with statement number 4. Gabriel Zuchtregel believes snakes were painted on a wall in the insula to frighten away intruders. Here we have a name. Names are excellent keywords. You will find names exactly like that in the passage if the passage talks about them. So, let's have a look at the passage. Where can we find the name? Here, I can see it here. So let's read this sentence more closely. On the same wall are 2 yellow serpents, good demons, according to site director Gabriel Zuchtregel, which represent a connection between the gods and the humans. Though the precise function of the 3 rooms is still unknown, and then the passage goes on, we are not interested in the function of some rooms, we are interested in the serpents on the wall. Now, let's again have a look at our statement. The statement says, Gabriel Zuchtregel believes snakes were painted on a wall in the insula to frighten away intruders. Is this what the passage says? The passage talks about the insula here. We haven't read that sentence. Maybe we should have a closer look at this one quickly. Within the excavated insula is one particular large painted wall enclosing 3 rooms. It mainly depicts scenes from the myth of Achilles, in which the soldier is shown dressed in women's clothes as a mean to escape fighting in the Trojan War. And then the passage goes on with the sentence we have just read. On the same wall are 2 yellow serpents, good demons, according to the site director, which represent a connection between the gods and humans. The statement says that the snakes were painted on the wall to frighten away intruders. This is not what the passage says, right? The passage says that they are good demons and that they represent a connection between the gods and the humans. So he doesn't believe that they were painted on a wall in the insula to frighten away intruders. And this means that the statement is false because it contradicts the information given in the passage. So I'm going to write down false here. We will move on to statement number 5. The bodies of the majority of Pompeii's population have never been dug up. So we're looking for the bodies of the majority of Pompeii's population, and we want to know whether they have never been dug up. Let's have a look at the passage. There was nothing about that in the first paragraph. Also here, there was nothing about digging up bodies. So let's scan the passage from here. This sentence says, archaeologists also discovered human skeletons in the most recent dig. This is interesting. Here they are talking about archaeologists who discovered human skeletons. And this seems to relate to our statement because we are looking for bodies that have never been dug up. This seems to fit. So let's continue reading here. Up to 15,000 people are thought to have perished under the volcanic ash and tiny stones called lapilli thrown up by Vesuvius. But fewer than 1,500 skeletons have been unearthed in total. In the latest dig, the remains of 2 adults and a child emerged. And then the passage goes on. We're not interested in that anymore. We are interested in this sentence here, because this sentence says that up to 15,000 people are thought to have perished. So they are thought to have died under the volcanic ash and the tiny stones, but fewer than 1,500 skeletons have been unearthed in total. Let's again have a look at the statement. The bodies of the majority of Pompeii's population have never been dug up. This is true, right? Because the passage says that up to 15,000 people are thought to have died under the ash, but only less than 1,500 skeletons have been unearthed in total. So less than 1,500 have been dug up. And this means that the correct answer is true. The bodies of the majority of Pompeii's population have never been dug up. Finally, let's have a look at question number 6. An attempt to switch to preservation rather than excavation at Pompeii was unsuccessful. So we are looking for preservation rather than excavation. Let's look for these 2 words, preservation and excavation. They may be paraphrased. Let's check this out. So we have already had a look at all these paragraphs here. There was nothing about that. Here, this paragraph, which we just read, talks about skeletons that have been found, but there is nothing about preservation. So let's have a look at the last paragraph and let's see whether it tells us anything about preservation. No other site has been continually excavated for as long as Pompeii. So here they talk about excavation. So contemporary archaeologists are walking a tightrope. On one hand, there is no doubt these ancient places, objects and remains unlock valuable stories about those who came before us. But on the other, constant excavation work risks destroying the very essence of the city. And then the passage says some experts have argued that the focus should be shifted towards conservation of existing finds rather than on unearthing more and causing deterioration of the area overall. So, what does our statement say? Our statement says that an attempt to switch to preservation rather than excavation at Pompeii was unsuccessful. What does our passage say? The passage says that some experts have argued that the focus should be shifted towards conservation. The statement says switch to preservation rather than excavation. This is paraphrasing, right? A switch means the same as shift. So to shift towards something means to switch. And conservation is a paraphrase for preservation. So, what have experts said? They have argued that the focus should be shifted towards conservation, so towards preservation rather than excavation. And the statement says that this attempt to switch to preservation rather than excavation was unsuccessful. This is what we need to figure out now. Was this unsuccessful? In 1999, officials even tried to halt further excavations at Pompeii and neighboring Herculaneum, but the ban did not hold. This is interesting. Unlike the family cowering under the stairs, our interest in these buried cities is alive and kicking. So the ban did not hold. This means that the attempt to switch to preservation rather than excavation at Pompeii was unsuccessful. And this means that the statement is true. It agrees with the information given in the passage. It matches the information. True. Amazing. We have solved these true, false, non-given questions correctly. Awesome. Great job. By the way, if you want more IELTS reading practice tests, hit the like button and write yes in the comments. If you want me to talk about something else, tell me your video wish in the comments so I know what you would like to see on this channel. Now, let's continue solving this test. We will move on to questions 7 to 10. What do the instructions say? Complete the following summary. So, these are summary completion questions. I'm going to write this down here. The instructions continue saying, write no more than 2 words from the passage for each answer. This is super important, guys. You must read the instructions carefully. You must write no more than 2 words from the passage for each answer. If you write more, the answer is wrong. So make sure you read the instructions carefully before starting answering the questions. Write your answers in boxes 7 to 10 on your answer sheet. Now, the title of this summary is Frescoes in Pompeii. Let's read this sentence here. Let's start reading from here. Several recently unearthed frescoes have intrigued archaeologists. One of these, found not far from what was probably a bakery, depicts a, and then comes the gap. Now, we have a look at the passage, and we're looking for unearthed frescoes, and we want to know what one of them depicts, and it was found not far from what was probably a bakery. Let's have a look at the passage. You may remember that we read about the pizza, and there was something with frescoes in that paragraph. I remember that. The pizza was here, and we read something about frescoes. Here I can see the word fresco. So let's read this sentence again. Starting here. Nearby was a fresco, a painting made on wet plaster that showed a round flatbread on a tray, leading investigators to speculate that Pompeians had enjoyed an ancient kind of pizza. Let's again have a look at our summary. What does it say? One of these, so one of the unearthed frescoes, found not far from what was probably a bakery, depicts a something. What does the fresco depict? What does it show? The passage says that it showed a round flatbread on a tray. Showed is another word for depict. So this is just paraphrasing. So the correct answer is flatbread. And since the instructions say that you can write no more than 2 words from the passage, it makes sense to write round flatbread because it shows a round flatbread on a tray. So I'm going to write round flatbread. We move on to the next sentence. Another at a fast food stall shows birds and something. What does it show? What does it show apart from birds? Maybe you remember that we read about the thermopolia, and here It said that the stall sold meat-based fast food, or it's likely that the stall sold meat-based fast food. And the summary says that at a fast food stall, a fresco depicts birds and something. So this seems to be the correct paragraph. Let's read this sentence from here. Since 2020, visitors have been able to see a complete thermopolium decorated with frescoes of gladiators and animals, including chickens and ducks. It is likely that the stall sold meat-based fast food. So, what do we have here apart from birds? Animals including chickens and ducks, and gladiators. This is what we need to enter. Here it says another at a fast food stall shows birds and gladiators. Gladiators is the correct answer. We will move on to the next sentence. One of the largest intact walls in Pompeii surrounding something is covered in frescoes. Let's have a look at the passage. The largest intact wall, one of the largest intact walls. Here, the next paragraph here talks about a particularly large painted wall. Let's read the sentence more closely. Frescoes offer some of the clearest glimpses into the culture of the era. Within the excavated insula is one particularly large painted wall, enclosing 3 rooms. It mainly depicts scenes from the myth of Achilles, in which the soldier is shown dressed in women's clothes as a means to escape fighting in the Trojan War. What does our sentence say? The sentence says one of the largest intact walls in Pompeii surrounding something is covered in frescoes. The passage says that one particularly large painted wall mainly depicts scenes from the myth of Achilles and so on. So this wall here is indeed covered in frescoes here, because it's painted and depicts these scenes. So it's covered in frescoes. This is what our sentence says. And our sentence now says that it surrounds something. Surrounding something is covered in frescoes. What does it surround? It surrounds 3 rooms. Here you can see that the IELTS uses paraphrasing again, enclosing 3 rooms. Enclosing means surrounding. This is paraphrasing, okay? The IELTS uses this very often to check whether you understand the meaning of the passage and the meaning of the questions and answer choices. So, the correct answer is 3 rooms. Let's check out the next sentence. The space was probably used to make offerings to the gods, and the fresco subjects include the soldier. Who? Which soldier do they include? Let's check out the passage. Here, the passage says, it mainly depicts scenes from the myth of Achilles, in which the soldier is shown dressed in women's clothes as a means to escape fighting in the Trojan War. So Achilles is the correct answer. I'm going to write down Achilles and pay attention here. You must write Achilles correctly, and it also starts with a capital letter here, a capital A, because it's a name. As you can see here, I don't use all caps when writing the answers. You can do that. Here I don't do it, but if you don't do it, you must pay attention to letters that must be capitalized. And Achilles is a name, so the A of Achilles must be capitalized. And if you are unsure whether you have written the word correctly, go back to the passage and check. This is super important. It says Achilles here, and I have written Achilles. This is correct. It's really worth investing the time to check whether you have written the answer correctly, because if you have misspelled it, the answer is wrong, even though you have found the correct answer, and then you don't get the point. Amazing! We are done with the summary completion questions. Great job! We will move on to the next questions, questions 11 to 13. Choose the correct letter, A, B, C, or D. Write the correct letter in boxes 11 to 13 on your answer sheet. So here you can see the questions, and they always have 4 answer choices, which you can see here. There are questions and they always have 4 answer choices, and you have to choose the correct letter. And so these are multiple choice questions. We will start with question 11. Which sentence best summarizes the first paragraph? So we don't read the answer choices because we would waste valuable time. We go directly to the first paragraph, we skim it, and then have a look at the answer choices and figure out the correct answer. So let's start reading from here. The city of Pompeii near Naples, Italy, was buried under volcanic ash after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. It has long been a source of fascination for archaeologists, since the entire city was buried at once, and as such it provides a unique insight into life during the Roman Empire. So this is just a description of what the passage is generally about, right? It's about the city of Pompeii, and it explains what happened back then. Excavations at Pompeii have continued on and off since the 16th century. What is remarkable is that approximately 1/3 of the city remains buried, and surprising artifacts and remains are still being uncovered today. And because they have been protected from air and water for nearly 2 millennia, they often emerge in near pristine condition. We read the sentence before, we know what it's about. Let's have a look at our answer choices. A. Extraordinary objects are still being discovered at Pompeii even after centuries of excavation. This sounds interesting, right? Extraordinary objects are still being discovered at Pompeii after centuries of excavation, because this is what the passage says here. It says, what is remarkable is that approximately 1/3 of the city remains buried, and surprising artifacts and remains are still being uncovered today. This is super interesting here. This is super important for our answer choice. Surprising artifacts and remains are still being uncovered today, so they're still being discovered. And here it says extraordinary objects, which is the same basically as saying surprising artifacts, which is what the text says, are still being discovered. So if they're uncovered, this is what the text says, they are discovered, even after centuries of excavation. This seems to be the correct answer, because this best summarizes the first paragraph. But before we choose A, let's quickly have a look at B, C, and D to make sure we can rule them out. B says, the third of Pompeii that is yet to be unearthed is not likely to reveal any new information. This is not what the passage says. The passage says that there are still surprising artifacts. So B is out. C. Pompeii is the only city ever to have been completely buried after a volcanic eruption. The passage doesn't say that. It only says that the city of Pompeii was buried under volcanic ash after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. It doesn't say that it is the only city, so this doesn't best summarize the first paragraph. This means that C is out. D. The main reason archaeologists are interested in Pompeii is that it was typical of Roman cities. This is not what the passage says, right? The passage says that it has been a source of fascination for archaeologists because the entire city was buried at once, and provides a unique insight into the life during the Roman Empire. The passage doesn't say that the main reason archaeologists are interested in Pompeii is that it was typical of Roman cities. So this answer choice is out as well, and now we know that A is the correct answer. So we are going to write A on the answer sheet, because here it says choose the correct letter A, B, C, or D. Write the correct letter in boxes 11 to 13 on your answer sheet. Always read the instructions carefully. The next question is question number 12. What does the writer say about human remains found at Pompeii? We're looking for human remains found at Pompeii, and we want to know what the writer says about them. Let's have a look at the passage. What does the passage talk about human remains? Paragraph 1 didn't talk about that. Paragraph 2 talked about the pizza. There was nothing about human remains. The next one was about the Thermopolia. There was also nothing about human remains. Then came the frescoes. Nothing about human remains. Here, this paragraph talked about skeletons. By the way, here you can see that you don't have to read the whole passage in detail when you are looking for the correct answer. Just scan the passage and look for the relevant information. This makes it so much easier for you to find the correct answer fast. So, we already read the beginning of this paragraph, so let's continue reading from here. In the latest dig, the remains of 2 adults and a child emerged. From the positions of their bodies, it seems they had crouched under a staircase, hoping it would protect them, but the roof of the house subsequently collapsed. Many of the skeletons found in Pompeii have been similarly preserved mid-gesture, trying to shield loved ones or their own heads and bodies as the debris came down. They're a stark reminder that the eruption of the volcano was a human tragedy, not just an attraction for tourists 2,000 years hence. Let's have a look at our answer choices. What are the answer choices? They are often preserved in active poses, trying to defend themselves and their families from the ash. This seems correct, right? Because active poses defend themselves and their families from the ash. This seems correct because this is what the passage says here. The passage says that many of the skeletons found in Pompeii have been similarly preserved mid-gesture, trying to shield loved ones or their own heads and bodies as the debris came down. So here it says they have been preserved in active poses, trying to defend themselves and their families from the ash. This is paraphrasing. Families means loved ones. This is what the passage says here. Loved ones. They try to shield loved ones or their own heads and bodies. And what does the answer choice say? Trying to defend themselves and their families from the ash. Yeah, they wanted to defend themselves and their families, so they wanted to shield, protect themselves and their families. So A seems to be the correct answer. But before we choose A, let's quickly have a look at the remaining answer choices to make sure that we can rule them out. Damage caused by the ash and lapilli makes it difficult to determine details about them, such as age or sex. The passage doesn't say anything about that, right? The next section doesn't talk about skeletons anymore. We have read that one. So only this passage here talks about skeletons. If you remember, lapilli are the tiny stones thrown up by Vesuvius, but there is nothing about that this makes it difficult to determine their age and sex. So this answer choice is out. C. It is unlikely many more skeletons will be discovered because the bones will now have decomposed. This is not what the passage says. The passage doesn't say anything about that here. So this answer choice is also out. And D, they indicate most people were killed not by the ash itself, but by buildings falling on top of them. Guys, here you need to be very careful. The passage does indeed talk about buildings falling on people here. Here, this sentence says, from the positions of their bodies, it seems they had crouched under a staircase, hoping it would protect them, but the roof of the house subsequently collapsed. So this suggests that they were killed by the crash of the building, by the collapse of the building. So the building fell on top of them. But the passage doesn't say that the human remains indicate most people were killed not by the ash itself, but by buildings. This is not what the passage says. The passage merely gives an example and says, these people were killed by their building collapsing, probably. And then it goes on saying that people try to shield their loved ones or their own heads and bodies as the debris came down. So it doesn't say that most people were killed not by the ash itself, but by buildings. This answer choice is out as well. So here you can see that you need to be very careful. Do not just match keywords. Always try to understand the meaning of the passage and the meaning of the answer choice, because this helps you figure out the correct answer. So answer A is correct. So we are going to write down A on the answer sheet. Let's continue with question number 13. Why does the writer say that archaeologists are walking a tightrope at Pompeii? I remember that expression. This was in the last paragraph here. Where was it? Here. I can see it here. Walking a tightrope. So let's read from the beginning. No other site has been continually excavated for as long as Pompeii, so contemporary archaeologists are walking a tightrope. And now the passage explains why it says they are walking a tightrope. On one hand, there is no doubt these ancient places, objects, and remains unlock valuable stories about those who came before us. So that's why excavations are useful, because they can give us an insight into what came before us. But on the other, constant excavation work risks destroying the very essence of the city. And that's why, maybe you remember that, some experts have argued that the focus should be shifted towards conservation, so preservation, instead of excavation. Let's have a look at the answer choices. What do they say? The demands of the tourist industry mean they cannot keep working on the site all year round. This is not in the passage. The passage doesn't talk about the tourist industry and doesn't say that that's why they can't keep working on the site all year round. So answer choice A is out. B, funding now tends to be given to museums rather than to archaeologists for more excavation work. This is not in the passage. If you have a closer look at this paragraph, you can see that the paragraph doesn't say that. There is nothing about museums receiving funding here. So this is out as well. C, many of the structures are now so old that digging beneath them risks them collapsing completely. Does the passage say that? The passage says that constant excavation work here risks destroying the very essence of the city. But it doesn't say that many of the structures are so old that digging beneath them risks them collapsing completely. So C is out as well. We're left with D. Let's have a look at D. They have to balance public interest in the city's artifacts with the need to cause no harm. This is what the passage says, right? If you have a closer look at the passage, you can see that the passage says they are walking a tightrope and then explains why. There is no doubt these ancient places, objects, and remain unlock valuable stories, but constant excavation work risks destroying the very essence of the city. And this means that they have to balance the public interest in the city's artifacts with the need to cause no harm. So the public interest, so excavation interest on the one side and preservation interest on the other side. So D is the correct answer. We are going to choose D. And this means that we are done with the multiple choice questions. Amazing, great job. That's it. This was the first passage of this IELTS reading practice test. For the complete test, check out my IELTS materials, where you can find passages 2 and 3 of this test and many more practice tests and strategies that help you score high. I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified when the next video comes out. Also, share this video with your friends so they can improve their IELTS reading score too. See you in the next video!